Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull. I do some work for the HBAR Foundation, but for this interview, the opinions expressed are just those of my guest and I. And today, that guest is Mance Harmon, co-founder of Hedera, former Hedera CEO, and now co-CEO of Swirlds Labs. Thanks for coming, Mance.
Hey, Brandon, it's good to be with you.
All right. So there's almost daily news coming out about the Hedera ecosystem, and opportunity often lies in the space between perception and true value. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. With that said, there's plenty of questions floating around about Hedera. The first topic I want to hit on, it's kind of a heavy one, but we'll get right into it.
All right.
Hedera created a lot of hope of how revolutionary it would be with things like the Hedera launch event in 2018. I still remember Gabe getting up on stage and running through smart cities and, how Hedera was going to be integrated and how Hedera was the only network that would be able to handle that kind of an application. And when you create that much hope, people will dedicate their time, their capital, and even their lives to being part of it. And it can be difficult for people if those hopes aren't realized in the time horizon they expect. How did you view the responsibility of creating that sense of hope in 2018, and how do you view it today?
Well, look, that's a great question, and pretty deep. So let's just take a moment to review where we all started, right? So Lehman and I, of course, you and your audience know, we've had this vision for the future of how the internet should work and how that will impact society. It's a big vision. It was created over many years. It started in 2012 and then was first described publicly when we published a white paper in 2018 at about the time that you're talking. In fact, I think the white paper went live in conjunction with that presentation at the Sony PlayStation Theater in New York City on Broadway in March of 2018. So I think it's important to keep in mind that there was about 6 years of work that preceded the 2018 presentation in New York City. And it's now been a little more than 4 years since we first published that white paper at that same time. I want to stress the vision hasn't changed, nor has our desire to realize that vision. So it's a vision, it's a big vision for how to change the way that people interface with each other in every aspect of their lives. That's no small change. It requires a fundamental shift in computing paradigms, right? We're part of moving from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So are there analogies? I mean, we can take a look back, for example, at cloud computing. While the concept sort of technically launched in the mid 90s, it didn't begin to become mainstream until the mid 2000s. And, AWS Lambda's introduction didn't come until 2014. So if you believe that we're fundamentally going through a similar kind of change, in fact, I think it's a bigger change than cloud computing.
Sure.
It's going to take some time. And since we've launched this, it's been, or at least publicly in March of 18, it's been now a little more than 4 years. So what have we accomplished during that time? Well, first, Hedera has a functional governing council with 26 members, and it's growing. When we started the project, I remember very vividly being told time and again, you'll never be able to get global enterprises to work together. It's hard enough to get one or two or three to come together. It's impossible. It's going to be impossible to get the council that you're describing. But we've done it, right? We've got a functional council, 26 strong today. It's growing. We've more than met critical mass for having the kind of governance that we wanted or envisioned back then, and we continue to grow to 39. Since opening access to the mainnet in 2019, we've added multiple major services to the platform, including the consensus service and the token service and smart contracts 2.0 now. Operations have been decentralized. The first step of that was with the HBAR Foundation last year. And we've just recently moved to Swirlds Labs, as you pointed out at the beginning of this call. We've made the transition from Hedera. The operations of Hedera now, by and large, are decentralized, including Swirlds Labs. And we've announced the move from the platform being proprietary to open source. And that's just an indication and a measure of the growing maturity of the project and the readiness to scale an ecosystem of Hashgraph specific projects. We hope that lots of implementations of Hashgraph exist and they all integrate seamlessly with the Hedera network. And we've had fantastic network usage, primarily by small and medium businesses. Although the enterprises are beginning to come online. I know we're going to talk about Atma. That's a big one that's going to add billions and billions of transactions to the network. So, I think we've made fantastic progress since that March 2018 presentation in New York City. We've made it clear from the beginning, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. That's not what we're about. We're about long-term building a project, a network that's going to provide value to society for the next 100 years and beyond. So that's sort of the context. Now, to go directly to your question, as it relates to those that have dedicated their time, capital, and lives to being a part of this journey, Lehman views, I think the team views the relationship as a partnership. We're members of this community and we view the other members as partners with us on this journey. It's a partnership that I anticipate is going to last for many years to come. And what is our responsibility in this partnership? It's simple in my mind. It's to be honest, transparent, and to remain focused on the vision, not to be distracted by the noise in the industry, and to also hear and consider the inputs from those that have devoted their energies to the project. And so that's the direct answer. And we're going to continue to do exactly that for years to come.
Yeah, it's really been impressive how much has been accomplished over the past 4 years. I remember spitballing of, dream council members, and if anything, it's actually exceeded my expectations. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who didn't feel that way. It's been amazing what you guys have accomplished. But if you could go back in time and change anything that's happened over the past 4 years, what would it be?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was thinking about that. We have this big vision and this thesis. The thesis is that if we create a public ledger that's capable of really high throughput, really low latency, along with the best security possible, theoretically possible, and you combine that with a professional, decentralized governance model that is the council that we've talked about, that it will allow for applications that simply aren't possible on other networks. And so obviously the quickest point from A to B is a straight line, but we live in the real world and life rarely affords you the opportunity to go straight from A to B. That's been the case here. I mean, there have been a lot of curveballs on the path. So, and we when we started all this, we were under no illusions that the path would be easy. So revolutions rarely are, if you want to use that word. I think that's where we find ourselves. I think we're helping to lead a revolution against the problems that were created in Web 2.0. And there have been problems along the way. If we were going back and looking at any individual decisions that are being made, I'm sure that we could find some that in retrospect, maybe we would have made different decisions given the benefit of seeing how things worked out over time, or what external factors played a part in the results of those decisions, et cetera. But we continue to learn along the way. We've made adjustments as necessary based on market factors, and often community plays a role in influencing decisions that we make. We listen to the community very closely all the time, and we make adjustments. So I think that it's fair to say that we've learned a lot over the past 4 years. We've taken those learnings, we apply them to what we're doing now and decisions that we'll make in the future as a member of this community, and we continue to be dedicated on realizing the vision. I think that's an important point also. It's that when entrepreneurs pursue projects like this one, it's rarely the case that the plans that you start with are the ones you ultimately execute on in total. Being successful in an environment like this means that you learn very quickly. You have to learn very quickly and then take those learnings and apply them in real time. It's a lot of OJT, on the job training,
Sure.
in reaction to what's going on in the environment. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that. We've talked about the progress that we've made since we launched all that.
Sure. So, we were talking about hope and all those kind of things, and it's hard enough to determine what's going to happen, let alone when it's going to happen, right? You and Lehman have great vision, and you might be able to determine what's going to happen, but the timing can be difficult. So, what happened to the step function increase in utility mentioned by the team last summer, and just generally 2021 being the year of scale?
Sure. Well, look, we talked about this in our most recent town hall. It's a question that we get repeatedly. As you know, I mean, we see the questions obviously in the community. I do believe that we will see it's not just one step function. It's going to be a series of step functions. In other words, I just don't think that what we're going to see is sort of a smooth, steady ramp up of transactions on the network. We're going to see steps as high throughput applications come to market. Of course, because they're developed by third parties, these applications, they're developed by third parties and developers, enterprises. We don't control, nor do we always have visibility into the timing. So it's very difficult to predict when they will happen. What we do see often is that they're in progress. And, just like we as an organization have curveballs thrown our way, those organizations that are building their products and services also get curveballs. There's not a straight line between A and B for them either.
Sure.
And sometimes that results in delays. And that's what has happened. But we are still convinced that large enterprises are going to go to market with meaningful applications on the network. As you saw last week, or maybe it was the week before, Avery Dennison announced their Atma IO, and it's expected to generate many billions of transactions on the mainnet. That's the kind of step that I'm talking about, right? It's one company, one enterprise, one application, and billions of transactions. And I want to see dozens of those. And I think it's a big first step. And to use that as a pun in this case, I guess. But that's it. It's not that the fundamentals have changed in any way. Timing is very difficult to predict accurately. And but my belief in how this is going to unfold over time hasn't changed.
Sure. So, you already talked about the creation of Swirlds Labs, and we've already seen some products come out. We have HashScan, and I saw the video recently about, what is it, JSON RPC? Really impressive stuff. What are some of the main focuses of the lab this year?
Yeah. Priority number one for Swirlds Labs is to make it easier for enterprises to build solutions. There will be other things that we do. I mean, some of what you proposed there, or just talked about rather, is going to help in that regard, but it's kind of orthogonal as well. What I'm talking about is the work that Atma has done, as an example, and what Toko did with DLA Piper. They took the APIs that we've created in the platform today, and they built the full stack. That's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of work. And industry by industry, what you can do is sort of look at what the components are in that industry, or for a given type of use case, category of use case, and realize that lots, or maybe all solutions built in that use case category, are going to share a certain set of components. identifying those components, building those components as open source components, and then putting them out there for the community to use just makes it that much easier for an enterprise to build a solution. And so it's a layer above the APIs, happy, right? For those developers out there familiar with our SDK, the APIs that we provide, it's the next layer above that, actually we call them enterprise accelerators. It makes it possible for the enterprises to accelerate the development of their solutions and go to market. So that's a big focus for us. It's not just Swirlds Labs. It's a focus for Hedera as a network. There is a new committee that was created maybe a couple months ago, the Corporate Utilization Committee, CorpCom is what we call it. And that's the focus of CorpCom, is looking at these various use case categories, trying to identify how we can accelerate adoption and the creation of those solutions, sharing the lessons learned from those enterprises that have already sort of been the visionaries and early adopters, and identifying what is required to cross the chasm to address the early majority. Because the early majority is going to become the early majority when it's easy enough for them all to just build solutions simultaneously, right? And so that's a big focus for us in Swirlds Labs this year. But there probably will be other things along the way.
Yeah, I'm already impressed with some of the products you're putting out. Okay, on to the next question. HBAR and investors have been critical in bootstrapping the Hedera project. What are your thoughts around HBAR Tokenomics?
Well, look, it's we as an organization, and Lehman and I specifically, haven't talked about the economics necessarily of HBAR directly. We've left that to others. And it's probably going to remain the case that we're not going to do price predictions or anything like that. We don't want to sort of promote, as the founders of Hedera, we don't want to promote the view that HBAR should be used just for pure speculation, right? HBAR has utility in terms of securing the network, and HBAR is required by the applications to use the network, and those are critical. Now, the economics are based in supply and demand, and just like in sort of the normal definition of a token, if you have a fixed number of tokens and the demand for those tokens goes up and supply remains fixed, then one would anticipate that when people are trading those tokens, the price of those tokens will be reflected appropriately there. So, we're frankly, just one word, I think we're a lot better off today than we were whenever we first launched the token, the project. We've made great progress over the past few years, I guess, and I'm very happy with the way things stand.
Sure. So, speaking of supply, you and Lehman are the largest individual holders of HBAR. Are you and Lehman selling right now?
No, we're not currently. We did sell tokens in the first half of last year, and we published our selling plan in the fall of 2020, long before doing so the whole community could see exactly what we were going to do. We intend to continue notifying the community well ahead of selling any tokens. We believe it's important to be transparent about those things. We took the further step to try and lead in this industry, going way beyond what most of our peers do, in that we published our account numbers. So they're out there on the Hedera website. If anybody wants to look them up, that you can go and just look directly at what our account numbers are. And of course, that means you can watch our accounts and know firsthand what we're doing with our tokens. You can see it for yourselves. I know a lot of people are watching those accounts. So, but no, the direct answer, to the question is we're not selling coins today. We haven't for quite some time now.
Okay. So we talked about council members, the Hedera Governing Council, and the community gets really excited when we get some big names added to the list. The past few months, we haven't gotten too many. There was something noticed in the meeting minutes that board votes, and I'm not sure if that was specifically for governing council members, but was paused until this Swirlds management shift took place. Does that mean that we might start to see some more council members come on board?
Well, I do think there will be more council members that are coming on board, but I want to clear up maybe what might be a misperception there. I mean, that played maybe a minor role. I think that the slowdown really is a result of three things. Hedera has been in this period of transition. First, there was the creation of the HBAR Foundation, and most of the people who had been involved in council recruitment at Hedera moved to the foundation. And the foundation is playing a role in council recruitment today, but there was a period of time in which just the foundation standing up its processes and procedures, and everything that goes along with starting at zero and, going from 0 to 1, it included council recruitment in terms of their processes. So there was a delay there in part because of that. Also, then Hedera, it's also been spinning out the remainder of operations, as we've talked about, to Swirlds Labs. As a part of this, formally transitioning responsibility for recruitment moved from Swirlds. Swirlds technically had the right to choose the first 39. And that meant me and Lehman. We were the ones really making the decision about who to invite. That has now changed, and we've given up. Swirlds has given up that right, and a membership committee has been formed inside of Hedera, and that's relatively new. Past couple of months, maybe 3 months, something like that. The committee is now active, but this is a change to the way things have worked in the past. There are new procedures and new ideas for how to go about council recruitment and how to scale that beyond what it's been in the past, but it's new. And so there was a delay there as well. And then finally, there's a focus on inviting members that are going to bring use cases first. Hedera has reached critical mass, as I said before. It's reached a critical mass that was needed to have a functioning governing body that's world-class. We have that. And so now there's an opportunity to be even more selective than we were before. And I think we set a very high bar in the past. But the process hasn't stopped. There is a pipeline of council members, and these changes that I've all talked about are now behind us, and now people are sort of setting in to the new structure, and I would expect that process to accelerate.
Okay, I gotcha. So another big topic is network staking. That's one of the early promises of the network. So many of the promises that you've made have come to fruition, but we haven't quite realized that one yet. And it sounded like it was going to happen in Q2. Do we still expect it to happen in Q2, or do you think it's been pushed back a little bit?
I expect it's not going to be in Q2. There is a lot of work that is in progress on this. So it's a very active project. I would also point to, I think it's HIP 406, if I'm not mistaken, the Hedera Improvement Proposal 406 has a very active conversation underway on exactly what that staking program should look like. It is soon. So probably not going to be by the end of June, but I do think it's soon.
All right. So do you think the current risk-off environment in the markets will pose a challenge to the roadmap going forward?
Not to the roadmap. When I think back to what happened last time we saw one of these cycles, so, I think it was in March of 2020 when COVID really hit. Right, we did see a a retraction in terms of work that the enterprises were doing. Up to that point, we were getting traction in an increasing way with the enterprises building out their use cases, their solutions, and then COVID hit. And those innovation departments sort of stopped. They didn't stop completely, right? I mean, there was still some progress being made, but the progress did slow. I don't see that happening right now. It's not to say that it won't, but what we see is a lot of interest on the part of enterprises in a way that we've never seen it in the past. And I'm talking not just about the maturity of thought. I am talking about maturity of thought, but I'm also talking about just sheer volume, just the number of enterprises that now are getting into this with well thought out projects and plans. I don't see today that stopping. The other thing that's interesting is the labor market for Web 3.0 is just as tight as it's ever been. We're hiring. We want to hire a lot of people this year, and it's a tight labor market. Nothing that's happened in the markets so far have changed that from our perspective.
I gotcha. So we're shifting gears here a little bit. When high profile criticisms are raised in social media, why don't you and Lehman engage?
That's a good question as well. So as a general matter, those that criticize us on social media, they're not doing it in good faith. In other words, what I mean is that they have an agenda and their attacks are being made because of some, personal grievance, or perhaps they have the opportunity to personally or perhaps financially benefit from a public fight, right? That's what they want to do in general. And that's not always the case, but most of the time that's what's going on. They rarely contact us directly to have a discussion about whatever it is before the attacks start publicly. They simply launch into a public attack because they want to somehow personally benefit at the expense of the project. So in those situations, the truth really doesn't matter to the attacker. They're not interested in the truth. What matters to the attacker, whomever that is maximizing the number of eyeballs that are reading their tweets, right? That's their goal. So while there is certainly a temptation on our part to defend ourselves, we're human like anybody else. When we see something that we believe is incorrect or unjust, obviously we want to respond, but doing so actually benefits the attacker more than it benefits us to engage in that rebuttal. So we don't do it. As a matter of policy, we will leave it to the community to judge us based on our actions over time. I think actions are far more important than words. And the community has been there with us for years, and I think they know who we are, and the growing community will get to know us over time based on our actions. So we believe that reasonable, fair-minded people are pretty good judges of character, and they can discern the truth. So, we're happy to leave it in your hands in that regard.
And in addition to the community, that's what the market's about too. So there's two ways we can control that. So and we're going to shift gears again here, Mance. Many have speculated that if Hedera would pay Coinbase X amount of money, they would get HBAR listed immediately. Is there any truth to that speculation?
No, none whatsoever. Coinbase has reasons why they have not yet listed HBAR. It's up to them to decide when or if they're willing to share those reasons more openly, but paying a certain amount of dollars is not one of them. I promise you, has nothing to do with it. But I remain very optimistic that we are going to be listed by Coinbase.
All right. So I know that, I'm hoping that you're getting a good night's sleep, but this is figurative. What about Hedera keeps you up at night?
Uh, you know, there's not one specific thing that causes me to lose sleep. But I know it's metaphorical. The question is metaphorical. What keeps us up is just to make sure that we finish the race well, right? We started down this journey. It's a marathon. We've said it a lot of times. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we want to finish the marathon. We want to realize that vision that we articulated publicly for the first time back in March of 2018. And we're going to continue in this marathon. And so what keeps me up is making sure that we realize the vision of a 100-year project that becomes the foundation of a worldwide economy and part of society.
All right. So what application or infrastructure does the ecosystem need that is not as far along as you think it should be in development?
We obviously we cared about the EVM, and we when we launched the network back in 2019, or we opened it up to the public, I should say, back in 2019, we had the EVM functional, but it didn't have the performance that we wanted back then. And we needed to fix that, so to speak. We also saw the value in having HCS and the ability to create app nets. And we prioritized the Hedera consensus service and then the token service ahead of fixing the EVM. We've done that now. We have EVM 2.0. It's got much better performance. It's now ready for prime time. But even beyond that was the need to be able to take advantage of the full ecosystem of tools and utilities that had been built up in the Ethereum world, in the Ethereum ecosystem. We didn't have that ability. For something as simple as making it possible to use MetaMask with the Hedera network just didn't exist, even though, of course, we were using the EVM. We just this week, I think a day or two ago, maybe it happened yesterday morning, as of this recording, announced the creation of this bridge that we talked about, the Hash.io bridge, that now solves that problem. And it's now possible for people to use MetaMask directly. And that full range of tools that are in the Ethereum ecosystem can now be used with us. This is going to make it so much easier for developers that were in the Ethereum ecosystem to now directly use the Hedera network. Those same sets of tools and utilities that they're familiar with, they can just use them. And I think it's such a game changer in terms of attracting sort of native Web 3.0 developers to the project, right? We see two kinds of developers, the Web 2.0 developers that are coming to the project for the first, or coming to the crypto space for the first time. And then the existing Web 3.0 developers that have been in the crypto space, they cut their teeth on Ethereum back in 2015. And now they can just make the migration over to Hedera. And this makes it so much easier. That has bothered me for a long time. It's been a source of frustration for the whole team. We now have that behind us. That's a big deal.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So I was going to talk a little bit more about Atma.io, but you've actually covered it. You've covered that you think there's going to be billions of transactions added to the network using it.
Yeah.
Hedera has been tested. Of course, testnet has been tested at very high transaction volume. And I know AdSense, I think, did a short test of a few minutes, and they got up to maybe 1,700 transactions per second. But with Atma.io coming online, we could see a couple thousand on a consistent basis. Do you have any concerns about the network being able to handle it? It really hasn't been tested on a live scale like that.
No. Absolutely not. While the community maybe hasn't tested the network at quote at scale, we have, of course, we do it every time we release, have a new release to the network. We're testing the boundaries, and so we know what we can manage in terms of transaction throughput, and we're not going to have any problem with that. And what we could make things faster today if we needed to. It's just not been the priority because we haven't had the demand for 10,000 TPS, for example. And we have all these other things, just like I was talking about a moment ago. Hash IO, in my opinion, is far more important than making the network faster when we don't need the capacity. So no, I'm not worried about meeting demand as demand comes online.
All right. So Atma.io, again, it's a really exciting use case in the enterprise space. And of course, you might not be able to give the specific names, but what are some of the other things that are being worked on in the enterprise space that has you excited?
This is public. I know that we've talked publicly and they've talked publicly about their plans and the work that they're doing. ServiceNow has been very public and vocal about what they're doing. I'm very excited about everything that they have planned. I can't talk about the specifics,
sure,
but they are working on things. The banks are working on stable coins and other economic or financial, I should say, use cases. There are ESG related projects underway with very large players. Look, it's the number of projects, the range of applications that are being worked on is increasing. Again, timing is hard. How long is it going to take for them to go from POC to full production deployment? It's really difficult to tell. And there's so many factors that have an impact on that. It's just impossible to really predict. But what I'm looking at is not whether or not they're going to deploy, but whether or not they're working on it. Are they making progress? Are they taking steps? Is it active? If we were looking at this kind of by analogy in the open source world, how many commits are there to the GitHub repository, right? Those things, those indicators are good indicators. And as long as they remain good, then that is an indication that progress is being made towards these major projects.
Well, it's music to my ears to hear that kind of confidence. All right. So where do you see the Hedera ecosystem by year end?
By year end, more. I think that's the answer. Bigger, yeah. More participants, more developers, both developers that have been in the crypto industry and have discovered how easy it is to now build dApps on Hedera, and also the developers that are just entering the industry for the first time, and they're making decisions about which platform to trust with their applications. More integrations with participants, infrastructure and service participants within the ecosystem, the larger crypto ecosystem, excuse me. More progress on the platform roadmap and more steps in the direction that we've been headed, and just realizing the vision from 2018.
All right. So I know I was all over the place with those questions, and you're a really good sport about it. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to pass on to the community before we let you go?
Well, look, I know that the community can be bummed. And when I say community, I don't mean just the Hedera community, but the larger crypto community can be bummed about the crash in the market. There's often just sort of a sense of disappointment that goes along with that. I think that going through it, first off, it's expected, right? We have expected this. It's not like this is a surprise. It's important to sort of shake it off, so to speak. And that's what we do. And it's a time to be building. After years of building the plumbing, so to speak, we as a project are now beginning to move up the stack. That's real progress. We're making it easier for adoption of the network. I anticipate increasing community involvement in the project. And Lehman and I are excited now to be able to participate as peers in the community through Swirlds Labs. So from our perspective, it's a really exciting time, notwithstanding the token price and the crypto market situation that you just sort of have to ignore. That's what we do, and stay focused on realizing the vision. But this is, in our opinion, this is fun. The stage that we're at is a really fun stage because we're seeing the fruit of all of that labor, and the network is going to benefit from that.
Well, the potential is super exciting. Mance, thanks you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
It was good seeing you again. Anytime. Thank you.